The right side of this offensive line is a problem that nobody is talking about loudly enough, and training camp is weeks away. The Maxx Crosby trade speculation just got the most concrete proposal yet, with real picks and a real player going in both directions, and Raider Nation needs to hear what is actually being offered. The roster is almost complete, but the two most important unsigned players are still sitting without contracts, and the Terron Johnson situation needs to be resolved before training camp opens, or this secondary loses the flexibility that makes it dangerous. Stay here with me, Raider Nation. Let's get into the news. The most concrete Maxx Crosby trade proposal yet just landed, and this time there are real picks and a real player going in both directions, which means this conversation is no longer just background noise. The pitch is Crosby to the Philadelphia Eagles in exchange for a 2027 first-round pick, a 2028 second-round pick, and defensive lineman Jalen Carter. That is the package. A first, a second, and a two-time Pro Bowl interior defender who would immediately become one of the most disruptive players on this defensive front. And the logic behind why Philadelphia would do this is actually sound. The Eagles have watched what the Myles Garrett trade looked like. They know what a dominant pass rusher costs on the open market. And with Jalen Carter still unsigned on his extension, flipping him for a player who is under contract and already proven as an elite edge rusher makes financial sense for a team that cannot afford to let contract uncertainty linger on both sides of the ball. Now let me tell you exactly where I stand on this, and then let me give you the honest counter-argument. Maxx Crosby is the heart of this defense. He is the player who sets the tone every single day in practice, who leads the pre-practice handshake circles, who gets the energy going before a single snap is taken. The Athletic's Sam Warren reported on June 18th that Crosby is fully reintegrated into this team, that he is an active part of the leadership group, and that from everything he has said publicly, he is happy with how things have turned out in Las Vegas. That is not a player who is mentally checked out. That is a player who is committed to this rebuild. And his 2025 numbers before the surgery tell you exactly what you are giving up. He played 935 snaps, posted a 79.7 PFF grade, generated 53 total pressures, 10 sacks, 31 hurries, and 12 quarterback hits. Against the run, he recorded 46 solo tackles. That is elite production from an elite player. But here is the part this fan base has to sit with, honestly. The Raiders already agreed to trade him once this offseason. Spytek showed his hand. And if this team starts slow in 2026, the calls from Philadelphia are going to get real very fast. The question is not whether the Eagles want Crosby. The question is whether this front office can hold the line when a first-round pick and Jalen Carter are sitting on the other end of the phone. Now, while that conversation is about protecting the most important player on this defense, there is a veteran offensive lineman sitting in free agency right now who could solve one of the biggest remaining problems on this roster for under $2 million, and his name is Kendall Lamm. The right side of this offensive line is a vulnerability heading into training camp, and Lamm is the most direct answer available to fix it. DJ Glaze is the current favorite to start at right tackle, but his rookie season was inconsistent. And this is not a situation where inconsistency is acceptable when Kirk Cousins is 37 years old with limited mobility, and Fernando Mendoza is the most important player on this franchise. One bad performance from an unprepared right tackle in a critical game can do more damage to the Mendoza era than any front office decision made this offseason. That is the stakes. Now here is why Lamm specifically makes so much sense beyond just filling a roster need. He spent his most recent seasons with the Miami Dolphins running Mike McDaniel's dynamic outside zone blocking scheme, which is almost exactly the foundation of what Klint Kubiak is installing in Las Vegas right now. He already understands the lateral movement, the reach blocking, and the quick decision-making that this system demands from every lineman on every single snap. He is not walking into a foreign environment trying to decode new terminology from scratch. He is a veteran who has lived this system and can execute it from day one of training camp without a learning curve. At 34 years old with injury history, Lamm is not a long-term answer at right tackle, and nobody should pretend otherwise. His role would be clear from the moment he signs. He comes in as a swing tackle, a mentor for Glaze, and an insurance policy that gives this coaching staff a proven option if anything goes wrong up front. The Raiders have approximately $25 million in total cap space, with around $8 million in real flexibility for new contracts before training camp. Lamm's projected market value is $1.9 million. That is not even a conversation. That is a phone call that should have already been made. The offensive line is the foundation that everything else is built on. Linderbaum anchors the middle. Miller locks down the left side. But the right side still has a question mark sitting on it that a veteran with system familiarity and starting experience can answer immediately. Lamm is that veteran. And if this front office lets training camp open without making this call, that question mark becomes a real problem the moment the first blitz package arrives in week 1. While the front office is still working through the holes on this roster, the good news today is that one more piece clicked into place, and the signing of Keyron Crawford means 8 of 10 draft picks are now under contract. But the 2 that are not signed yet are not depth pieces or rotational players. They are Fernando, Mendoza, and Jermod McCoy. And that is the part of this roster update that deserves real attention, because those 2 names represent the most important investments this franchise made in the entire 2026 draft class. Crawford's deal is a 4-year rookie contract, which is standard for a 3rd-round pick. He was the 67th overall selection after playing college football at Arkansas State before transferring to Auburn, where he started all 12 games in 2025 and posted 36 tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery, and 1 interception. Those are real numbers from a player who earned his draft position. He is going to compete immediately for a role on this defensive front in Rob Leonard's 3-4 scheme, and his production at Auburn suggests he has the tools to make an impact as a rookie if the development goes the right way. Getting him signed and into camp with clarity about his role is exactly what you want from a 3rd-round pick at this stage of the offseason. That part of this story is straightforward and encouraging. Now here is the part that actually matters most coming out of this announcement. Mendoza not being signed yet is not necessarily alarming on its own. Number 1 overall picks often take longer because the contract structure sets a precedent for the entire draft class at the position, and both sides want to get the details right. But every day that passes without that deal done is a day of unnecessary distraction around the most important player this franchise has drafted in years. A signed contract removes a question mark. It lets Mendoza focus entirely on football when training camp opens instead of having any part of his mind on contract negotiations happening in the background. And McCoy's situation carries its own layer of complexity because the knee uncertainty adds a dimension to his negotiation that does not exist for any other player in this class. His contract structure has to account for things that standard rookie deals do not normally consider. Spytek needs to get both of these done before training camp opens. This draft class is almost complete. Finish the job. And while we are talking about contracts that need to get done before training camp opens, there is one more situation that Bleacher Report's Mo Motenhan called the Raiders' most important contract extension decision of this offseason, and it involves Terron Johnson. The slot cornerback the Raiders traded for from the Buffalo Bills skipped OTAs earlier this offseason because he wants a restructured deal, and resolving that situation quickly is about a lot more than just keeping one veteran happy. It is about unlocking the full potential of what this secondary can become in 2026. Johnson still has 2 years remaining on his current contract, but there is no guaranteed money left on the deal, which is why he stayed away. According to Vincent Bonsignor of the California Post, Johnson wants more guaranteed money, not additional years. That is an important distinction. He is not trying to blow up his contract or demand a massive raise. He is a 29-year-old veteran who has missed games in each of the last 2 seasons, 4-2, 0-2-4, and 5-2-0-2-5. And he wants the security of knowing that if he gets hurt playing for this team, he is not left without financial protection. That is a reasonable ask from a player who was an All-Pro as recently as 2023 and who was specifically acquired to solve the slot cornerback problem that has haunted this defense for years. Johnson eventually rejoined the team before mandatory minicamp, which tells you the relationship is not broken. But the situation is not fully resolved either, and letting it drag into training camp creates exactly the kind of distraction this coaching staff does not need, when there is so much new installation happening on both sides of the ball. Now here is why resolving this quickly matters beyond just Johnson himself. Treydan Stukes is one of the most versatile defensive backs on this roster. He can play nickel corner, deep safety, and outside corner. Right now, with Johnson locked into the slot role, Stukes can be deployed creatively across multiple spots depending on the opponent and the situation. That flexibility is what makes this secondary genuinely dangerous rather than just athletically gifted. But if Johnson's situation stays unresolved and he misses time or creates noise going into camp, the Raiders lose that deployment flexibility because Stukes has to cover the slot instead of being used as the chess piece he is capable of being. And safeties coach Matt Robinson already compared Stukes to Kyle Hamilton, saying his size, speed, and versatility is similar to Hamilton, and that the hope is he brings that same physicality to his position. You do not waste a player like that by forcing him into one role, because a contract situation was not handled in June. Get Johnson's deal done. Give him the guaranteed money he is asking for. And let Klint Kubiak use this secondary the way it was designed to be used. Well, Raider Nation, here is what today actually told us. This front office is closer to finishing this roster than the headlines suggest, but the decisions that remain are not small ones. The Crosby trade proposal just got more concrete than anything we have seen all offseason, and the only answer to it is a healthy Maxx Crosby, taking the field and reminding the league why no package is ever going to be worth it. Kendall Lamm is sitting in free agency for under $2 million, and the right side of this offensive line needs him before training camp opens. Mendoza and McCoy need to get their contracts signed so this coaching staff can focus entirely on football when the pads go on. And Terron Johnson needs his guaranteed money so Treydan Stukes can be deployed the way this defense was designed to use him. 4 decisions. All of them have clear answers. All of them need to happen in the next few weeks. Training camp opens in late July, and everything changes the moment it does. The window to fix these things quietly is closing. Drop your take in the comments. This space belongs to everyone who lives by just win baby and never walked away from the silver and black.